Hey everybody, this is Mike Oppenheim, and you are listening to Coffin Talk, Interviews with the Living, a weekly podcast that explores how our views on death affect the way we live our life. And this week we actually have a really special guest for me. His name is Jason Van Glass. He's a stand-up comedian and improvier in Los Angeles, California. But I actually met him when I think we were like 9 years old in the fourth grade when I transferred schools. And I knew him somewhat through high school, and then we graduated at 18. I think I saw you once at UC Santa Cruz after that, and then now we're in our 40s, and I'm really, really excited to catch up with him and interview him. So, Jason, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we always ask our guests how old are they, where they grew up, and what generation they're a member of. So we grew up in the same town, but I don't know, like, how would you answer those questions as far as like what generation?
The generation one's hard for us. I think we're on the cusp. I guess I thought we're an elder millennial, but it depends who you ask. Class of 99.
Exactly. Do you feel like we were born in like in between and like we were kind of like this weird quasi generation, or do you not really care about that kind of stuff?
I mean, I don't care too much about it, but I do think we're maybe in the middle. Because like we were like seniors when Pokemon came out. So I think we're missing out on some big millennial culture stuff in terms of SpongeBob or Pokemon. And I definitely feel like Gen X culture was what was cool when we were coming of age.
That's a really good way to put it, actually. I've never heard anyone articulate it like that, and I totally agree. It's like we looked up to that.
Yeah, to the older teens and early 20s people that were into slacker culture.
Exactly.
Definitely not grind culture, but slacker culture.
Yeah, that is definitely something that separates me from a lot of like just even 5 years younger than me people. And actually, I'm curious because you were always funny. Like from the moment I've known you, I thought you were a funny person.
Oh, wow.
And I was so excited that you decided to pursue comedy, but I also won't lie, I never saw it coming because I'm, you know, I was a teenager. I didn't think about what other people were interested in, what they were going to do, but you were always funny and witty and sharp. And I remember you had like good comebacks if someone was like trying to pick on you. So I'm curious, did you always want to do comedy or is it something that developed?
Both. I guess I always wanted to do it, but didn't realize I could.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't start doing stand-up until I was 30.
Wow, that's cool.
Not having really realized, that, you know, because if you watch Chris Rock, especially as a child, I think it's insane to think like I could do that.
Yeah.
I think it's normal to put it on a pedestal and love it and be enamored with it. But I think it takes a real disconnect to be like, oh, and I could do that. And so I guess I was much older when I realized this is the thing I care about, and like humans do it, and people don't start good. By the time we saw Chris Rock, he'd been doing it. You know, he was on SNL when he was 18. So by the time that 1996 special comes out, he's very young, but he's been doing it every day for 8 or 10 years. And in addition to whatever aptitude he had just learned how to do it.
Yeah.
I was always obsessed with comedy, but it never occurred to me that I would have it within my power to pursue it.
That's cool. Yeah. One of the things I like to do as I age is like give hope and inspiration to people of all ages. And I think comedy actually to me is one of the most fascinating entertainment careers you can have because it's rare to be like the Chris Rock, the Eddie Murphy, the really young, successful person. And it's much more common. Like one of my comics that I loved from like the late 90s was Bill Burr, who was like a nobody and then a sort of somebody. And now he's like the biggest name in entertainment. So, and that came in his 50s. Like, yeah. So do you have no end in sight? Are you happy pursuing it right now?
Well, you're talking to me during the best month of my life.
Yeah, exactly.
This has been well timed. I'm in Portland right now. I've been up here for 4 weeks. I'm living in a really beautiful forest, just 12 minutes outside of downtown, but very much in the woods with my dog. My dog is next to me right now, asleep.
My audience is going to be so annoyed because I say this on any time it comes up, but I lived in Portland for 4 years and it was like the most magical experience of my life.
It's a pretty incredible city. And also it's the first really robust run of stand-up I've done since the pandemic. So It feels great to be like back engaging with this thing I care about so much. The audience is really wonderful, and it's been going perfectly. I have zero complaints about the last 5 weeks of my life. In terms of what I want more from comedy, if it was just this, that would be, if just doing shows 5 nights a week and eating good food and hanging out with the dog.
I mean, that's incredible, and I completely agree. And also, when we were younger, Maria Bamford was like a big name and you're opening for her. So like, I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I did some really good shows at the start of this run, opening for Maria and Jackie Cation, opening for Sammy Obeid, who's really wonderful. People should look him up, Obeid. You can't complain about something like that. That's the dream to me. It's what I set out to do.
It's really cool and it's really special. And I really admire like something I was, trying to do research on you. You've also taught comedy classes, which this is like an issue of contention among what I would call pretentious a-holes and normal people.
Yeah, although I think it's changing a lot.
Yeah.
The idea of teaching stand-up, I guess the idea of teaching stand-up was maybe frowned upon, like it can't be taught. Mm-hmm. You have to go learn it or something. But I do teach it. It definitely can be taught. Yeah. It's how I learned to do it was I went out every night and like through trial and error and observation, learned tricks and what works and what to do and what not to do. And a lot of really great people are teaching all of a sudden, people with TV credits and it used to be that if you can't teach, but some really spectacular people like Ahmed Barucha, Arlo Warehouser are teaching.
That's so cool.
I've taught enough classes to see it work. It really works for my students, and my students may have zero previous experience on stage. They may have zero aspirations within show business, or they may have lots of previous tangential experience in terms of film school, drama, being an actor, being an improviser, being a sketch writer, being a professional TV writer. And regardless of where they're coming from in a very short amount of time, like 6 weeks, mm-hmm. I can give, it works. I've seen them get the tools and the understanding, because yes, you do have to go out and do open mics. That's how you learn how to do it. But like, what is an open mic? What do you do when you get there? How do you find it? How do you sign up? What is expected of you? Those are huge fears for someone starting out if they don't know someone that's doing it. And what do you talk about? What should your material be like? When stand-up was like 95% men, they had this chip on their shoulder that like, oh, you got to be out, you got to go. Only way to do it's to learn. And it's like, that's not true for any other craft. No one's like, oh, pottery, it can't be taught. You just have to start throwing pots. And it's like, no, you have to throw pots, but someone can definitely give you advice about how to do it. And then you throw 1,000 pots and hopefully they get better.
Yeah.
But it's like, there's no other field where anyone's ever like, it can't be taught.
Yeah, no, and I was asking because I definitely support that. I am curious. I always want to ask when I meet comedians about the bombing, about like that experience, because it's like when you hear like someone on like Bill Burr, for just to repeat the name, he still bombs, like, and even if an audience like loves him and expects him to be good, he can bomb. What is it like? Like, how do you talk about that to other comedians or even in classes?
I think it's pretty rare. Doesn't mean it can't happen even to someone skilled or experienced. And of course, your earliest sets are not going to be perfect because everyone has to learn how to do this. Nobody knew how to do it. They learned how to do it. Like, you can learn guitar at home, but to learn stand-up, you have to go out and get in front of somebody and see if they laugh. Mm. What makes it a joke is if someone else laughs. Hopefully a bunch of people you don't know understand what you're talking about and do agree it's funny. But I think bombing's kind of rare. There's a famous Bill Burr video where he's at some awful music festival. He's required to do, let's say, 10 minutes. And they are not paying attention. It's outdoors. It's during the day. They're there to see a band or something. And he just starts counting down, insulting. It was in Philadelphia. I remember that because he starts insulting. He's like, I hope the Flyers die in a plane accident. Everyone's going nuts. And he starts counting down the time he has left. I got 4 minutes left to get his, like, whatever his contractually obligated thing. But it's like, I don't know if that was a bomb. That's a famous video of his. But it's like, he's actually quite funny there. And like, yes, it's not going well, but that's the room, the lack of a room. There's no ceiling. He's outside. It's 2:00 in the afternoon. Everyone's drunk and there to see something else. But also, it's one of his famous sets. That video went viral because he is funny.
Yeah.
I judge the way I did based on the room. Mm-hmm. And if the show's going great and you do a 6 out of 10, then that's on you. Mm-hmm. And if the show's doing 6 out of 10 and you do 7, then it was pretty good. It wasn't what you wanted, but it was a 7, 7 out of 10. You held your own or did better than the circumstances of like, oh, there's not enough people here tonight. Oh, there's a television on during the show. There's all the things that could go wrong. And if you're on a show that has 18 people and seats for 50, it could go really well, or it might just go okay, but it's not. To me, it's not bombing. So maybe I'm delusional, but I judge it in the context. If you're opening for Maria Bamford and there's 1,000 people there and they're in a good mood, you should have a good set. And thank God I have when I've been in those situations. But that's the ironically, the best shows are set up to be the easiest. You hopefully open up these opportunities to open for like Sammy Obeid, where his audience is there to see him. They're in a great mood. They have never heard of me, but they trust that the show's going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in a situation like that, then yeah, it should be going pretty good.
Yeah.
Times I've seen someone bomb, it was somebody doing racist or misogynist or just weird stuff in a situation that should have gone, was set up for them to be doing so much better.
Yeah. Well, and I always try to explain to people when they meet me that like I come from a place that was like pre-liberal. Like it was like we just grew up, it was normal to be nice to people and tolerant where we grew up. Not everyone was like
we grew up in the shadow of Berkeley in the 60s.
Yeah, so...
And then definitely a culture of tolerance and inclusion and diversity.
Yeah, so it's just, it's weird when, my question to you was going to be, when the term cancel culture was all the rage, a lot of comedians were saying, hey, you know what, it's more fun to perform in these times. It's a bigger challenge, and you got to really be funny, and the joke has to cut through. If you want to say something that's poignant, it has to still be funny and all that. Did you take any stance on that? Like, did you have an opinion, or did you just keep your head down and do what you do?
Well, this is a common question on like day one of a stand-up class. Is like, well, what are we allowed to say?
Mm.
And actually, I think the answer is pretty easy. If you're talking about yourself, you're allowed to say anything you want. And where you're going to get into trouble is when you start talking about a group you're not a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where even very skilled and successful comedians like Dave Chappelle get into trouble. Dave is not trans.
Yeah.
And his opinion or observations about trans people aren't very interesting to me. They aren't very nuanced or deep. And they aren't tied to his own experience or status as a very diverse person, a person with a mixed race family, a person that's converted to Islam, a person that grew up with two parents that have PhDs, but were cops in Washington, D.C. in the 80s. When they saw Dave Chappelle, did they think his parents had doctorates? No. Mm-hmm. They were treating him based on his appearance. And to me, Chappelle is a disappointment as someone that was one of my favorite comedians. I would have said number one. But comedy's always changing. It's always evolving, and honestly, always becoming stronger, in my opinion, because it's hard. It's hard for observations that aren't grounded in your personal point of view and your life experience to compete with someone else's true life experience. Ali Wong's true life experience, John Mulaney's true life experience, Richard Pryor's true life experience is inherently more interesting to hear about than like why you think the Olympic open ceremony was woke or something. It's just like,
yeah, unless
you're an Olympian, why are we talking about this versus your struggle with alcoholism or your struggle or success in marriage, et cetera, where you grew up, what you're doing now has so much more weight. And so I think one reason comedy has shifted very strongly into personal narrative storytelling is that it's a stronger version of the weapon of comedy. It's a better version of it.
This is a really fascinating moment of intersection for me in my life, because I always respected you and liked you, and I knew you were smart, and I heard you talk in class and stuff, but to hear you talk intelligently about my by far favorite subject is just like so much fun.
I've spent my whole life thinking about it, and I've spent the last 14 years deeply engaged in this maybe ill-advised pursuit of like stand-ups. Have something I say on the first day of a class is that stand-ups, the best ones, Robin Williams and Chris Rock, have a reputation for being geniuses, and I think they may be executing works of genius, but it's important to remember that they learned how to do stand-up too.
Yeah.
And no one knew how to do it right away. And so I've spent the last 14 years as someone that was a huge fan of stand-up trying to unpack the answer of well, how would I do it? How would someone do it? How could I do it? What would I do? How could I be good at this? It would be so cool to be good at this was really the goal.
That's so cool. And I want to shift gears to just touch on what the podcast is usually about, which is...
Sure, we can do your podcast at some point.
I led the discussion, and I'm realizing that I'm going to eat up all my free time talking about comedy. With that said, I do notice a theme in all of your answers, which is you're actually very upbeat and optimistic. And I say actually because that was not at all my impression of you in high school. So I'm curious, are you hardwired to be happy and successful oriented, or is this something you achieved philosophically?
That's a great question. I think there's a couple of components. Let's see if we can remember all of them.
All right.
I think one is that we are elder millennials, so we were Gen X coded in terms of sarcasm and irony and grunge music and being, a culture of not being seen to strive for things. So that might be part of my like high school persona in retrospect. But am I hardwired for happiness? Absolutely not. I am not hardwired for happiness. I come from a long line of people that were not hardwired for happiness and struggled with some success or not to overcome whatever the genetic chemical thing is that's happening. You're talking to me, like I say, a really beautiful part of my life. I have no complaints about the way things have been going for the last 5 weeks. And, I'm so glad I found comedy, and doing it was to be doing the thing I care about the most has been really rewarding over the last decade plus. But no, I'm so prone to depression, and I feel really blessed right now to not be suffering from depression because I've experienced it before, and people in my family have certainly experienced it, and I'm sure that shapes my attitude towards life or how I'm going to live it. But no, I'm not naturally a happy-go-lucky person. I'm doing my best to be grateful and really be happy every day.
That's cool. That's a really good answer. And I'm curious, do you have a metaphysical opinion on not just what's going to happen when you die, which is the first part of this question, but also on like, is depression or like that chemical aspect to depression a part of that worldview of yours? Hey everyone, if you're a fan of the show, please head over to mikeyop.com and click the subscribe button. It's the best way to support us, and it's free. That's MIKEYOPP.com. Thanks.
Yeah, it must be. I don't have a strong opinion. I don't think anything happens after we die. I won't be here. It doesn't matter that much. And I don't fear it. And maybe I don't know if that's rational or not. It just doesn't. I've never once been concerned about it. I don't take risky. I try to avoid, crossing the street at dangerous intersections. I'm not saying I'm like I'm certainly trying to live life as long as possible because it's fun, but I don't fear death. I think after we die, that's it, I guess.
Yeah. And so when you're depressed and the thoughts arise of the depression nature, and I'm trying to make this nice for the general audience, but everyone should know what I'm talking about. When those really deeply negative thoughts come, do you think about death alongside it, or is it just, I'm not happy, this isn't working out, my baseline is not good?
Yeah, that's what I wish I was. I don't know.
Because I think this is just something I'm fascinated with all of us, is how much, especially like we said, we keep talking about our age group. Thank God we went to high school without social media. I mean, I don't know what I would have done if I was in high school with social media. I would have been so miserable.
Yeah, I think it would have been worse for sure.
Like for me, I mean, I just, I can't speak about anyone else.
I don't think the bullying maybe both of us received was too bad, but no. It's high school. It was not, it's hard for everyone. And it's especially hard if you're a little bit out of step or something.
Exactly. Yeah, no. And that's exactly, I always try to explain to people, I'm like, I wasn't like some like 1980s Brat Pack loser who got picked on. It was just more like there's a pecking order and it was there and everyone knew it. And and
everyone's insecure and trying to kind of jockey for power or some status. And so, no, I wasn't like physically assaulted, and no, I wasn't no one was making me give them their lunch money, but it's high school. And I think social media is bad for me now. It would have been a disaster. The confidence I have now and the self-knowledge I have now.
Yeah, there's nothing like my life trajectory. I've been a writer, and so when I finally got like my first good publishing deal, then seeing how little traction it got on social media was depressing. And if social media wasn't there, I would have just been happy. Like I would have just knew my book was out there, knew people could order it, and I would have just gone on with my life. So it's very, for me, it's hard.
Yeah, and I've rarely had anything be called viral on social media. And in some ways, I'm not pursuing that at all. But really, I've been on Twitter a long time, and I really would be nice if every funny thing I said got attention, but it doesn't. And spending 15 years on Twitter, it can't be good for someone's brain, but I think it's inured me to getting 4 thumbs up on something. It's like, and thank God I have this other outlet where I can get up in front of 50 people and be funny. And I know that I'm funny. I have unshakable confidence in a lot of aspects of my life. I have a dangerous amount of confidence that has come from stand-up primarily.
That's so cool though. And that's kind of what I'm full circle trying to get at, is like, there seems to be this like redemption arc in your life story so far, and especially right now, like you said, it's the time of your life. And I just think about this all the time because my peaks have come much later in life, and like especially now. I'm actually enjoying my 40s way more than I enjoyed my 30s, which I enjoyed more than my 20s. So yeah, I mean, the physical health part, just not health, but like the knees aren't what they used to be. That's the only thing in my opinion. Yeah, so that is kind of more or less true for you too. Like life just seems to be getting better.
Yeah, and that's related to self-knowledge too. It's knowing what you want to do with your life and what is important to you, and the confidence that comes from getting traction in career or in marriage or these other things. Mm-hmm. And yeah, my 40s are shaping up to be better than my 30s. My 30s were certainly more interesting than my 20s, and there's nothing wrong with my 20s, but part of it is just like knowing what I want to do every day and focusing on it and just continuing to grow. Mm-hmm. And I hope to just continue to grow. I may not understand what children are doing, but I'm never going to judge it. I have a rule for myself that it's like, you just not, you know what I mean? It's not, that's the scariest thing to me is that I would become closed off to change or closed off to what's going on. Life's getting better and better. And I hope that it continues for another 40 years that way. And
awesome. I mean, it's so great to catch up with you and to hear all this, and your attitude is amazing. If there's a young Jason Van Glass out there who is like in high school and not thinking he's as happy as he could be, what advice do you have for that mindset? And maybe explain yourself a little bit more before you answer that.
Man, I don't know what I would tell teenage me in terms of like happiness. Sometimes I think about, I started stand-up when I was 30, and it was something I was obsessed with from a young age. And so I do wonder, like, well, what if, because, there's people I know that had improv in their high school, or have, I've had a student that was a teenager, was in high school to take stand up. And so I do wonder how my life would be different if someone had noticed and been like, oh, humans write television. You're obsessed with sitcoms and humans write those. And that's a job, but it's also like an artistic career. Because I was certainly my artistic interests were being cultivated in the way we grew up. My parents cultivated my interest in drawing and painting and comic books, but nobody ever made the connection for me or noticed that not that it's that weird to be obsessed with The Simpsons or Seinfeld or whatever, but I do wonder how my life would be different if I had like started stand up when I was 18 and if I'd still be doing it now, or if I had to come into it when I was 30 and I started taking Ritalin when I was 27. That was life changing. And you may have to just come to stuff when you're ready to do it. And having started when I was 30, I was coming, most, but not all people are younger when they start. And I had a much surer sense of how committed I was to doing this than some 19-year-olds might be.
Yeah.
And it's not that you have to keep doing it. It's actually a pretty logical choice not to do it. But I just knew I wanted to do it, and I wasn't going to do something else. I was going to do this. And I was going to see through the early years that are maybe dispiriting to just do a bunch of open mics and nobody's paying attention and you're not as good as you want to be at the thing you're trying to do. And so I don't know how I could fix being a depressed teenager. I don't know what the difference is, but I do think sometimes about how my life would be different, but not necessarily better if I'd started when I was 19 or 21. I was writing comedy for the newspaper in college.
Well, that's what I remember.
I was doing all these things. I was doing all these things that were adjacent to this thing that really is my life's purpose. I'd be really surprised if I ever stopped doing comedy in some way.
Well, I can tell you I'm a very sentimental person, and it's always been weird because I'm a guy and we're not supposed to be. So to tell you how thrilled I was when I saw your name on the Santa Cruz newspaper. I was visiting John Salmon. He and I are very close friends. And and I was just so proud and happy for you because I consider you like of my ilk. And what I mean by that is just like these kids who grew up in this town who were definitely not on the inside of it. And it was a bizarre experience for me, to say the least. But I always admired you growing up. You just had exactly the same streak you have now, which is confidence in like your perceptions, and it's cool to see how you've turned out.
Oh boy. And doing stand-up for 13 years has, like I say, it's made me have a dangerous amount of confidence. I really have an unshakable belief in myself. Because it's like, what's gonna happen? What are you gonna tell me, or what are you gonna do that's gonna like you cannot bully me. I cannot be bullied. I'm a good looking, beautiful, funny, talented radiant. So
That's awesome.
I try to keep the ego in check, but whatever insecurities teenagers have been washed right out of me from
Yeah. Well, who would be like someone you admire that if you met you might like start choking on your words and getting sweaty?
I don't know, but I've really, it's crazy because I started it when I was 30.
Mm-hmm.
I have like a 10 years of adulthood before that I think provides important context for like how incredible some of the stuff that's happening in my life is now.
Mm-hmm.
That I am on a show with Maria Bamford and Jackie Cation, two of the best comedians working today.
Hell yeah.
Is an honor. And I understand how lucky I am. I worked with Emo Phillips
Wow.
for a long time, and it's
cool.
nuts, right?
Yeah.
And I think I have an extra appreciation for like how wild it is that I was working with Emo Phillips, because I just know that my life could have gone down this other more boring path where I never discovered doing comedy.
That's cool. Wow.
And so I don't think I've gotten too like choked up or, but it's like certainly around someone like Emo, I was a little bit awkward, I think, because it's just like, I just can't believe we're hanging out or something. This is wild. I can't believe we're on stage together. I can't believe you even know who I am. Yeah, and living in LA and being a huge fan of to meet and then become friends with someone that was a writer on Mr. Show.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd tell high school me that, because I used to tape Mr. Show on VHS tape and bring it to school and show it to people at lunch.
Yeah,
and the idea that have not just met most of the cast of that show at this point, or cross paths with them in some capacity, but that I'm friends with some of the people that worked on that show is I think would have blown 16-year-old me's mind, because at that time I felt that show was on at midnight.
Mm-hmm.
It became a hit on DVD later when we were in college.
Exactly.
But I was obsessed with that show. I thought that show was so funny. I thought that show was the best show ever made. And I think if I time traveled back and was just like, you're gonna know, you're gonna be in the general vicinity of this thing that you are so obsessed with. I don't know if it would have fixed my depression, but I think it would have, if not blown my teenage mind, confirmed my greatest egomaniacal aspirations. That like, yeah, you'll see Bob Odenkirk sometimes. It'll be fine.
Yeah, it's crazy. It is a very interesting story to see. And anyway, to wrap things up,
it all worked out in the end.
Yeah, I'm really proud of you, dude, and I'm really happy for you. And everyone who's listening, please check out Jason Van Glass. Really easy to find him on every social media: Instagram, Twitter.
At Jason Van Glass on Twitter, Instagram, Venmo.
That's hilarious. Well, it has been great talking to you. Thank you so much for taking time, and I wish you nothing but success.
Awesome.
Thank you again, Jason Van Glass. Everyone, please find him on social media, and if you want to support our show, as always, the best way is to head over to MikeYop.com. That's MikeYopp.com. Sign up for the once-a-week email, Nevermore, and it will announce podcasts and other things we do. And as always, my name is Mike Oppenheim. You have been listening to Coffin Talk, and we will see you soon.